All right, welcome to this urgent explainer. Look, if you're an executive or corporate leader tuning in right now, consider this a high-stakes crisis management briefing. We are dissecting the massive compounding geopolitical, macroeconomic, and cyber shocks of June 2026. We're not just looking at isolated events here. We're dealing with a massive, interconnected system failure that's rippling through global operations as we speak. So let's just dive right in.
Here's the roadmap for our threat matrix today. We'll start with a quick sit-rep on maritime supply chains, move into digital infrastructure and cyber risks, and then explore the resulting market shocks. From there, we'll unpack the domestic political fragility within the U.S. before addressing the devastating global humanitarian fallout. Finally, we'll wrap up with a concrete executive resilience checklist. We're essentially tracing the domino effect, from physical blockades all the way to digital vulnerabilities and market crashes.
Okay, Section 1, SITREP on maritime supply chains, the double choke point strategy. This all kicks off with a massive physical catalyst, Operation Epic Fury, and the coordinated choke point strategy that followed.
So, following the U.S.-Israeli Operation Epic Fury back in February 2026, Iran didn't just throw down a traditional naval blockade. No, they completely weaponized maritime risk. Take the Strait of Hormuz. It normally handles 20% of global energy flows, right? Well, traffic there has plummeted by up to 90%. Producers are scrambling to pivot. Saudi Arabia is ramping up its east-west petrol line to 7 million barrels a day just to bypass the Gulf. But here's the catch. Bypassing Hormuz just shifts your exposure. The Yanbu terminal is now choking under massive bottlenecks in wartime conditions. And alternative routes, like the UAE pipeline, they're actively being targeted by ongoing drone strikes. The chokeholds haven't disappeared, they've literally just relocated. And the financial blow to maritime operations? It's staggering. War risk insurance premiums inside the Red Sea have skyrocketed by over 1,000%. 1,000%! And what about the ships forced to reroute all the way around the Cape of Good Hope? They're looking at 10 to 14 extra transit days and a jaw-dropping $1.8 million in additional fuel costs per round trip. If you're managing multinational supply chains, this is where the alarm bells should be ringing. Because this isn't just an energy sector problem. With both straits simultaneously compromised, up to 30% of container shipping is in jeopardy. We're talking about up to $10 billion a day in frozen trade. This strikes directly at the heart of global logistics, commercial agriculture, and yes, even semiconductor manufacturing. It's a logistical nightmare. Moving on to Section 2, Digital Infrastructure and Cyber Risk. Subsea cables and AI deregulation. Let's look at how this physical shipping crisis bleeds into the very arteries of the global digital economy. Because remember, this isn't just about oil tankers. A massive 90% of communications between Europe and Asia and 17% of all global internet traffic flows through subsea cables sitting right under the BabAlmandab Strait. And state-linked outlets in Iran are actually claiming these cables fall within their sovereign territory. They're floating the idea that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps could start levying licensing and maintenance fees on foreign tech companies. So regional instability is now actively threatening absolute core digital infrastructure. Against this backdrop of extreme cyber vulnerability, the White House is aggressively shaking up tech regulations. It's a dual-track shift. On one side, you have Executive Order 14285, which completely deregulates the commercial AI environment, expressly prohibiting mandatory federal licensing. But simultaneously, National Security Presidential Memorandum 11 orders the rapid, direct integration of commercial and open-source AI directly onto classified military networks. So the administration's intent is clear. Secure technological dominance over geopolitical rivals through defense integration while letting the commercial space run completely deregulated. But here's where the cyber risk really compounds for us domestically. Right as AI is being deregulated, the administration finalized the Schedule Policy/Career, or Schedule P/C executive order. This converts roughly 8,000 career federal roles, heavily targeting chief information officers and chief information security officers, into at-will positions. The administration argues this cuts through redundant bureaucracy to boost executive accountability. Critics, however, are raising massive red flags. They warn that stripping civil service protections from 8,000 government cyber experts risks severely eroding our institutional defense capacity right in the middle of a maritime and cyber crisis. There's real concern this could establish a political spoils system, heavily impacting corporate security partnerships. All right, Section 3, Market Shocks and Macro Instability. Labor data meets geopolitics. Let's tie this maritime and digital crisis directly into the global financial fallout. We are basically watching the ultimate good news is bad news economic paradox play out. In May, the U.S. economy added a surprisingly strong 172,000 jobs. Normally, great news. But with ongoing blockades in Hormuz driving oil over $100 a barrel, investors instantly panicked about inflation. Because of that solid job growth, the market expectation for a Federal Reserve interest rate hike spiked to 51%. Investors realized the Fed might be forced to fight energy inflation with higher rates completely regardless of the job growth. The result of all that panic? The NASDAQ composite plunged over 4% in a single day. And the severity of that market shock really can't be overstated. That single-day sell-off wiped out over $1 trillion in market value. $1 trillion. And it was heavily concentrated right in the technology and semiconductor sectors, dealing massive losses to giants like Broadcom, NVIDIA, and Micron. This choke point crisis didn't just stay in the water, it directly cratered corporate valuations.
Which brings us to Section 4, domestic political fragility, institutional standoffs. Because these global pressures don't just hit the markets, they expose deep structural fragilities right here in the U.S.
This is creating massive regulatory unpredictability for multinationals. We're seeing an unprecedented institutional standoff over war powers. Operation Epic Fury kicked off in February. By April, Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed a ceasefire was achieved and that U.S. actions were just defensive blockade enforcement. But Congress? They completely disagreed. On June 3rd, driven by a coalition of Democrats and Republican defectors, the House passed a war powers resolution demanding the president seek explicit authorization or pull forces back. The executive branch is arguing this totally undermines their negotiations with Tehran, with President Trump actually taking to Truth Social to call the resolution unpatriotic. But proponents of the resolution argue that the 90-day statutory limit has already passed. This historic bipartisan pushback is deeply impacting both policy continuity and the president's political legacy. And this structural realignment, it's fracturing politics down at the subnational level, too. Just look at the California gubernatorial primary. Thanks to new redistricting maps and a seriously fractured Democratic vote share, Republicans Steve Hilton and Democrat Xavier Becerra have been pushed to the front of the pack. So California's open primary system has actually set up a traditional partisan clash for November, rather than the usual dual Democrat race. From federal war powers acts all the way down to state primaries, these shifting political foundations are creating a highly volatile, completely unpredictable operating environment for businesses trying to anticipate U.S. policy.
Section 5, the global humanitarian fallout. Energy shocks drive food insecurity. Now, we really need to pivot from C-suite metrics to the massive human cost of this crisis.
The UN World Food Program has issued a stark warning. 45 million more people are now facing acute food insecurity. Why? Because energy markets dictate food markets. It's that simple. Take Somalia. They are entirely reliant on imported petroleum. With oils soaring past $100 a barrel, another 2.5 million Somalis are suddenly at risk of starvation. Over in Afghanistan, forced alternative transit corridors have ballooned aid delivery times from 10 days to an agonizing 75 days. Sri Lanka is looking at a similar fate, entirely due to extended shipping times and skyrocketing import costs. To quote the report directly, the naval conflict in the Persian Gulf is not merely a localized security issue. It acts as a primary driver of global food insecurity. And this interconnected nightmare is nowhere more evident than in Somalia. The high fuel costs compounding their hunger crisis are happening right alongside a total internal political implosion. After constitutional amendments extended the president's term, intense military clashes erupted in Mogadishu in June. Regional states like Puntland and Jubaland have basically severed ties with the federal government. Adding to the geopolitical mess, Turkey has actually intervened directly. They've deployed F-16s to Mogadishu and sent a drill ship to survey offshore resources, trading security assistance for a 30% cut of Somalia's exclusive economic zone revenues. It's a powder keg.
And in a rather stark geopolitical irony, guess who's capitalizing on the Hormuz disruptions? Russia. In May 2026, Russian raw crude exports reached a wartime high of 3.46 million barrels per day. With Urals crude peaking at $116 per barrel, they are pulling in absolutely massive revenues. And how is this happening? It's largely sustained by U.S. Treasury sanctions waivers. These are rolling exceptions specifically designed to stabilize global energy prices by keeping Russian oil on the market. So the crisis meant to isolate one adversary is, right now, actively funding another.
Finally, Section 6, Executive Resilience Checklist, Strategic Mitigation. We've mapped out the threat matrix, so let's shift gears to concrete, actionable strategy for leadership.
If you're a corporate executive focused on navigating this storm, here is your resilience checklist. Number 1, audit your physical supply chains right now. You need to understand your exact exposure to the Red Sea, the BabAlmandab transit routes, and alternative pipelines. Number 2, harden your corporate cyber defenses. With rapid commercial AI deregulation happening at the exact same time as massive upheaval in federal cyber leadership, your digital infrastructure needs to be fortified like never before. Number 3, stress test your financial reserves. Assume prolonged $100+ oil prices and sustained inflation are the new normal. And number 4, map contingency plans for deep U.S. domestic policy volatility as these institutional standoffs continue to play out.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As physical blockades, unprecedented AI deregulation, and deep domestic political fragility all converge at the exact same time, is your enterprise genuinely structured to survive the domino effect of 2026? It's the critical question every leadership team needs to be asking right now. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay focused, stay resilient, and I'll see you next time.